Hey there, my friends. Chris Marcus, Arcade Economics, here with you again on Monday, June 26th. Wow, almost halfway through 2017 already, which, of course, with our fascinating political and financial system, always a good time. And today, a quick video about a few thoughts I've been hearing about Bitcoin and silver and how perhaps there might be a connection going forward between the two, as we've talked about before here. One of the things with Bitcoin's recent ascent is you wonder why specifically now. Now, I know this hasn't been the case much in recent years, especially if you're a precious metals investor, but usually when there's a move, a company has great earnings or the price of something changes in for or against, but usually there's a reason for a move in the price of something. That's typically the way it happens. So why specifically now is Bitcoin and some of the other cryptocurrencies going nuts? Well, I guess there's a whole variety of reasons, although the one that I keep wondering about is if perhaps this is a sign that people are starting to see some of the cracks in seemingly in terms of the financial system, that just the days have to be getting numbered at some point. Again, I always think back to when I left Wall Street in 2012, and based on what I had seen and studied about, especially the precious metals markets, but just getting an idea of how Madoff-like this whole arrangement is, I'm stunned that just in the same way you had the housing and dot-com crises, a lot of printed money, a lot of debt, eventually these things have to come back and be processed, which is why you saw those bubbles collapse. So on one hand, unfortunately, I think that we're headed towards something like that again, and this time it will likely be the currencies or the governments themselves that are failing, which is why, again, having real goods, especially gold and silver, and to the degree that if Bitcoin is going to serve as a currency, basically I think it's a great time to have things out of the system as much as possible. I always realize that anything that I have on paper or electronic screen is just on paper or electronic screen. Now, everyone's situation is different, and how you balance all these things is another matter. But again, is Bitcoin signaling what normally you would see with gold and silver, which I believe is what we saw back in 2011 when both hit all-time highs. Silver matched its all-time high, got up to about $49. And gold, by September of that year, had crossed over 1900, and then mysteriously in the middle of the night, both of them got pummeled with a massive sell order, which, again, as a former trader, I would just say that I imagine that if I had placed an order like that, I would have been thrown out of the shop immediately, just because you wouldn't put such a massive order in the middle of the night and when there's no liquidity so you end up selling if you drive the price down. That was, anyway, the beginnings of when I started to notice things were not quite legit in gold and silver. But anyway, so if you have manipulation in gold and silver, but Bitcoin or some of the cryptocurrencies a little trickier to directly short, you can, with gold and silver, you can write paper that you don't have, which works for a long time until enough people come and say they want their metal, and then you have something what we've talked about for a while and what I've been waiting for a couple of years, and still believe we will see stunning prices of gold and silver, even without any further weakness in the dollar, but just if you didn't have the massive distortion that a lot of the banks are known for doing. So anyway, Could this be the crypto signaling that we're closer to that point where something happens? That's what I keep wondering. I haven't heard any other particularly compelling explanations of why that's happening yet. Again, I kind of came into this more from the precious metals side and never have been learning more about the cryptocurrencies recently, which now, aside from whether you should buy or not buy cryptocurrency, I think learning about what's going on is a great idea. My understanding is there's quite a number of fascinating uses, and that there's a lot of difference within the cryptocurrency. So certainly, well, I'll tell you what, if someone was wondering about, if the dollar is going to collapse, is their job or career going to be around, and they're looking for something that would seemingly be a thriving industry, certainly whether it's owning Bitcoin or being involved in some capacity would seem, in either case, worth learning about. But the last thought is something I've heard a couple times in the past week, where will the money flows from Bitcoin and silver affect each other? And let me explain that in the sense that different investors and traders have different profiles. So your typical Wall Street, is very focused on what's the results of the banks or next quarter. So a very short-term mentality. Now, what's interesting about silver in particular is that I would say most of the people who own silver at this point are a bit ticked off and frustrated because they've made what was, I would say, a very intelligent investment decision if they saw the money printing that was going on following the housing bubble. And yet it's been a tough couple of years. So one of the reasons why I subscribe to the thought that whenever silver does trade higher, we will see past 50, and likely, yes, believe it or not, I do expect at some point in our near future, or at least lifetime, although I tend to think it'll be sooner than later. But the thing is to unwind this, when you sell all that paper that you can't deliver, it's not like the random stock that, hey guys, happy got 10%, sells it. I mean, a lot of the silver investors, maybe I'm right, maybe not, but in either case, I find a lot of precious metals investors have that similar mindset where they do now. Well, again, it's not much mystery anymore. We have court evidence supporting that the markets have been manipulated. So I think there's a high expectation of what silver would be worth and the price that would have to be reached before many silver investors would sell. Now, on the other hand, with Bitcoin, and I'm going to speculate a little bit, although this is somewhat backed up by a little firsthand evidence. By the way, if you are interested in learning more about Bitcoin, I'd check out Bixweir, that's Bixweir, or Cliff High. Two great speakers, geniuses in their own right, that I've been learning about Bitcoin from. And today, Bix, in one of his videos, was mentioning how he, fortunately for him, had invested in Bitcoin early. So at some point, taking some of the profits, so especially if you've made a lot of money in Bitcoin and silver is still at what I would see as a pretty low, good entry price. The point being that if you have all of a sudden a lot of Bitcoin millionaires and billionaires, and a lot of them start having a similar mentality and saying, I want to take some of this, diversify it into silver, which is still low. Keep in mind, it doesn't take a lot of money going into silver to really unwind this whole scheme, because there's just not a lot of silver there from everything I've ever been able to see. So if you do have that case, I don't know, maybe Bitcoin doubles or triples from here and people are making fortunes, and a lot of that money starts to put pressure on the physical gold and silver markets. and we reach that point where someone shows up and says, I'd like my medal, and it's not there. And then, in the same way that the mortgages went down or the value of Bernie Madoff's fund went down, you're betting on something that will have the inverse and go up in spectacular fashion. That's what I continue to believe will happen. Again, I did buy my first Bitcoin a couple of weeks ago. Of course, I managed to get as close to the top as possible, although I'm planning on, I hope I'm giving that to my children or grandchildren one day. So anyway, it feels good to at least be learning about it and understanding the process. And I think we're in for exciting times. So hopefully, again, this was helpful. Leave your comments below. Hit that subscribe button. There's going to be some good stuff going down here. So I trust you're well and look forward to guiding you through this journey. Thanks.